Now, here is a huge question. Is Britain going bust? Well, the latest figures from the Office for National Statistics out today reveal that government borrowing exceeded £20 billion in September. Now, this is the second highest September on record, superseded only by the COVID lockdown September of 2020. Now, this comes as the UK's national debt is set to break an astonishing £3 trillion barrier within the next year. Well, should we all be afraid? Should we all be very afraid? Let's now speak with the political commentator and the former head of labour market analysis at the ONS, Jamie Jenkins. Jamie, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company again. You're an expert at stats and you make it digestible, even for dunces like me. So let's start at the beginning. Borrowing is growing through the roof. The cost of servicing that is going through the roof. And the government doesn't seem to have much in the way of cost savings. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, good afternoon, Martin. So what we've got is, it wasn't that long ago when Rachel Reeves was talking about like 22 billion being a black hole. So we've got this 1 month now where we've hit over 20 billion of borrowing. And if we take the first 6 months of the year, we've actually hit a total of 100 billion pounds. That's a staggering amount, 100 billion pounds when you take the government's financial year from April to the September period. So that's 7 billion above forecasts, and it's actually 11 billion higher than last year. And the forecast has already been uprated based on what we had last year. So the government borrowing is through the roof. But a critical part of what's driving this up, Martin, is when you actually look at inflation. So this is one of the areas where we've got much higher inflation in the UK than we have in some of our European counterparts. And some of the government policies, the national insurance hike, etc., is part of that. And there's three key parts as to why the borrowing figures are impacted by the government's policies on inflation. So the first one is the debt interest itself. So we borrowed nearly 10 billion pounds of that 20. So nearly half of the money we've borrowed was to go to pay the interest on the accumulated debt that we've got overall. But that's 2.7 billion higher than what it would be if inflation was a bit lower than what it should be. Then we've also got 2.6 billion increase in departmental spending. So that's all the government, different departments. And that's pretty much increases in wages where the unions have done the deals with the Labour Party. And the other one as well is that inflation's linked to other things like benefits and pensions. So with inflation being a bit higher, we've had to borrow another £2 billion for that. So the government's policies on inflation are pushing up the borrowing figures, and that's where we're hitting this astronomical figure of 3 trillion in the next 12 months.
So, Jamie, when you add all of that together, astronomical debt, astronomical spending, little in the way of revenues coming in, certainly revenues that can't eradicate things like soaring public sector wages, there's only one tool left in the box, and that's taxes. It's a foreboding picture moving towards November the 26th, Jamie.
Well, there's two ways of doing the figures here. So you either increase taxes or you cut spending. And we have seen taxes in the latest figures go up, but the government spending, some of the things I've talked about and other things have gone up even more, which is why we're borrowing more money. So the government has got two options. Yeah, increase taxes, but that then stifles economic growth, or cut taxes. But then you also need a thing about cutting spending as well. So maybe they should start with the cut in spending. And you started, I suppose, Martin, with is Britain bankrupt? Now, if you was running a business, imagine a scenario where the total debt of your business is equivalent to your annual turnover, and then you're borrowing money from the bank to pay the interest of what you owe the bank. Most banks would actually call you bankrupt. So I think pretty much the UK is heading in that direction if the government can't get control of the public finances.
Jamie Jenkins, Margaret Thatcher famously said, the thing about socialism is that in the end it always runs out of other people's money. Are we heading down that dark path?
Pretty much that's where we're heading, Martin. You can't. What you want to do is you look at your total debt. You want to look at it in relation to the size of the economy, and it's getting up towards 100% now in terms of the total debt in relation to the size of the economy. This is not levels we've seen kind of in normal peacetime. It crept up in the pandemic. It's been that high in wars in the past. So to be in these unprecedented times in peacetime is concerning. And the one way of getting that down, Martin, is to grow the economy. And I'm not seeing anything on the table from the current government that's going to grow that economy. And the economic forecasts are looking pretty dire as well.
Well, Jamie Jenkins, we've got about 35 days to go until November the 26th. Can the mother of all rabbits be pulled out of the hat? Jamie Jenkins, thank you as ever for joining us on the show today. Superb. Thank you very much, my friend.